As the Carolina Panthers continue their reascension into becoming a serious franchise once again, there's one fan favorite player that I feel is starting to get lost in the shuffle, and in this video, we're going to discuss just how we got to this point and what the future may hold for said player, and we're going to get into all of that right after this.
I'm from the foe, you dig?
Welcome to The Way I See It with Jamario Rashad. This is a Carolina Panthers fan channel. Please make sure you subscribe as I am on my road to 3K, trying to make sure my channel continues to grow as my Carolina Panthers fight down this road towards the playoffs this season. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the video. Now, the player that we are going to be discussing today is none other than former Colorado Buffalo, however they like to say it, I'm not sure, Jimmy Horn Jr., drafted 208th overall in the 6th round, the final draft pick for the Carolina Panthers in the 2025 draft. Now, expectations for what Jimmy Horn was going to come into this team and do were that of a 6th round pick, but because of the special skill set that he possessed, many people thought that he would be infused into this offense and immediately be utilized as a deep threat, one that Bryce Young hadn't yet had in his short career so far. But throughout the early training camp portions and into the preseason, we heard a lot of great things coming from training camp, even so much as there being prominent people in the NFL world as former NFL player and current ESPN analyst Louis Riddick saying that he had heard that Jimmy was the best wide receiver in camp by far. When we transitioned over to the preseason, we saw that Jimmy Horn was coming in not even with the second stringers, he was coming in with the third stringers. So that gave us, the fans who had been around and had saw this movie a few times, that gave us a clear indication that he was not just as set in stone in the rotation as many people prior to the season had thought. But even if he wasn't going to be a staple in the wide receiver rotation, with the changes and the continual changes to the NFL kickoff rules, many people, including myself, thought that Jimmy Horn was going to come in undoubtedly and be a special teams ace in terms of returning not only punts, but being that guy that was back there to return kicks as well. But unfortunately, as we moved into the season, that was not the case. So to give you a little background onto what Jimmy Horn's rookie year has been like, the ups and the downs so far, let's just take a look at these first 11 games of the season. The first 4 in which Jimmy Horn was a healthy scratch. He did not play whatsoever in these first 4 games of the season. Many people were like, what's going on? Where is Jimmy? Why isn't he playing? If you draft a guy, why isn't he playing? Well, we brought in the likes of a guy, a former Pro Bowler in Hunter Renfrow, who we had paid real money to actually go out there and play. And the most surprising guy in the wide receiver room was a guy that is in his 2nd year, came over to us as an undrafted free agent, and then an undrafted free agent, that being Bryson Tremaine. When the season started, the Carolina Panthers chose rather to go with, of course, Teteroa McMillan, Xavier Legette, what was supposed to be Jalen Coker, but unfortunately Coker got injured, so he was replaced with Hunter Renfrow. But then down the line, you had David Moore as well as Bryson Tremaine. Those were your 5 game day wide receivers, and Jimmy Horn was left relegated to the bench, not even suiting up for the first 4 games of his career. Now, David Moore was injured, I believe, in the 1st or 2nd quarter in the 4th game of the season against the New England Patriots. That was actually the action that catapulted Jimmy Horn to actually being on the active roster. And as I mentioned earlier, with us assuming that Jimmy Horn was going to be somebody that could have a tremendous impact on the special teams unit, we thought that he was being elevated to come in and, play where David Moore had been playing for the first 4 games. That unfortunately was not true. We saw Trevor Etienne get out there and him struggle in his first couple of times actually trying to field the ball. And then in weeks 3 and 4, one of the most egregious marks against what shows that the Carolina Panthers brass, what it shows they feel about Jimmy Horn is they brought in a guy like DJ Dallas, a a journeyman. Uh, I think yeah, he's not. He looks like a fullback. He's built like Eddie Lacy, but they claimed for him to be a running back. They brought him in off the street, allowed him to return kicks for 2 weeks in the absence of David Moore before just ultimately deciding that we are going to take Trevor Etienne out of the doghouse and put him back there. That was just something that showed what Tracy Smith, the special teams coordinator, how he felt for or and about Jimmy Horn. It may not necessarily totally be about Jimmy Horn when you look at who's been back there returning the kickoffs. Yes, it's been Travis Etienne, but there's also been an alternating group of running backs, whether it be our starters, Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. That just shows me that Tracy Smith values size and the ability to probably break tackles back there in this new system that is returning kicks more so than just speed and elusivity. So that leaves Jimmy Horn on the outside looking in for the special teams unit. But when he was actually given the opportunity to play wide receiver, he had a 2 game stretch that he actually announced himself in the NFL. First of all, in the first game he played, being active for the first time, had a clutch catch on the final drive of the game against the Miami Dolphins in that game-sealing game-winning drive that Bryce Young put together. Jimmy Horn had a excellent clutch catch that kept the chains moving on either third or it might have even been fourth down. It escapes me right now. But then moving to the next game when we went against the Cowboys, then he established himself even more, having his best game to date, 2 for 2, so not spectacular in terms of the total output. But what we saw was he was getting better week to week. That was 2 for 2 for a total of 34 yards in those 2 games. And Panthers fans, including myself, thought, okay, Jimmy Horn is here. He is going to be a staple of this offense. We are going to see a lot of him moving forward. Unfortunately, the week after that Cowboys game was week 6, and that was the week that Jalen Coker, last year's undrafted free agent phenom wide receiver, well, it might not be necessarily fair to call him a phenom, but he was a surprise, very good undrafted player who we thought was going to be a staple in this offense. He came back in week 6 against the New York Jets, and ever since then, Jimmy Horn has pretty much been a complete afterthought in the passing game and the wide receiver rotation. To give you a more context to that, like I said, in the weeks prior, those 2 weeks that Jimmy Horn played without Jalen Coker, he had a total of 5 targets. But in the 5 games since Jalen Coker has been back, Jimmy Horn has had a total of just five targets in those games as well. In the last 2 games, he hasn't got any targets at all. He has still been on the field. He's been used as a, somewhat of just a decoy and a gadget guy whenever they do decide to use him on the jet sweeps. But since Jalen Coker has come back, he has been relegated to the back of this wide receiver rotation because Dave Canales and Brad Isaac, everybody on the offensive side of the ball in terms of the coaches, continue to express and press the button about just how valuable Bryson Tremaine has been to them because of just how effective he is as a blocker. The Carolina Panthers' identity so far this season has been running the ball behind Rico Dowdle when we have been at our best, and the wide receiver that gives us the best chance to have an effective run game out there aside from our starters when we do have to throw a fourth or fifth or sometimes just a third wide receiver out there. The wide receiver that gives us the best chance to run the ball effectively is Bryson Tremaine. So at this point, Jimmy Horn hasn't been a healthy scratch, but he hasn't been instrumental in the offense whatsoever. So what exactly does the future hold? Well, in my opinion, I think Jimmy Horn's future with the Carolina Panthers is heavily contingent upon his ability to outplay or just get the opportunity to show that he can be as effective as Trevor Etienne when it comes to the return game. Both of these guys are in a similar position when it comes to their stature in the offense. Both guys were drafted in a relatively loaded position. ETN being drafted behind Chuba Hubbard as well as Jonathan Brooks, who we still, in my opinion, should hold out some hope for coming back next season. And now the infusion of Rico Dowdle, who we're not sure if he will be here next season. But that is three names that, in essence, would be in front of Trevor Etienne. And then we move over to Jimmy Horn. You got T-Mac, you got XL, you got Coker, you got Tremaine. You have just a myriad of guys that are going to be holding Jimmy Horn's opportunities back. So if he wants to be an effective player for the Carolina Panthers and actually be here more than just 2 or 3 years, what Jimmy Horn needs to do is show his value in the kick return game. Hopefully, Tracy Smith will give him some opportunities to at least return punts, but we are not at practice. We are not at training camp. We do not know why he isn't getting those opportunities, but I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say you are the professional coach, so I will give you the deference to say that I will just go with what he says on that. But Jimmy Horn absolutely has to get better in all aspects of the return game, man. But what do you all think about this particular topic, man? Do you think that there is a big future, or do you think that Jimmy Horn will be a prominent fixture in this offense at any point? I do hold up the opinion that moving forward, I do think because there was draft capital invested into Jimmy Horn in year two, I don't think we will see as much Bryson Tremaine as I think they will try to validate their asset or their investment into that asset that is Jimmy Horn. But in terms of the near future, I don't think that there's going to be a lot for Jimmy Horn to do, man. But whatever you all think, make sure to leave your comments down in the comment section, and I'll be sure to get back to you then. But until next time, I am Jamario Rashad. This is the way I see it, and I'm out. Peace.